The following is brought to you by the PLD Projects Network. It's me. It's PLD. PLD. PJ Campbell. Two mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are two mediocre white dudes on film.
Yo, we're back.
Oh!
I started with yo because I was so excited. I've been waiting to talk about this movie with you.
Yes.
Basically since we even started talking about doing this podcast. Because we're talking about Halloween H20 20 years later, which is a weirdly convoluted title for some reason.
It's one of the worst titles out there, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, but
don't love it.
We're talking Halloween H20, but I'm PJ. That's PLD.
That's me.
I'm happy to be here. What about you, bud?
I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to be here for you. I really like. To me, I made this comment earlier. Halloween 4 was my first Halloween film, really, and this is that's the one I kind of have this big nostalgic feel for. This is your Halloween 4, so I'm excited. I'm excited to get to hear this from you, hear your love from you. And the funny thing is, actually, I think we're on the same page of a lot of it, and it's kind of nice to be on the same page after the last two were a little bit shaky at times, a bit shaky at times.
I love you forever, but I will never get over your like volatile feelings towards 6, but giving so many things in 5 a pass. Where I was like, no, stop it, Paul, stop it.
I think I realized that part of that was also nostalgia because you got to realize Halloween 5 came out a year later from Halloween 4, so it's kind of like one of those things. Kind of like Halloween 6, I saw as a very cynical college age kid, so it was a little different. I think that's what it was.
What's different now?
Because
now you're a cynical, suburban dad.
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a very good question.
I mean, look, that's why I'm just going to call it as I see it, and that's okay. But, before we get started, there's been talk on the internet. I didn't even prompt you to this. I just wanted to bring this up to you. There's talk on the internet the last couple of days, couple of weeks probably, and we've been tagged in some of these posts about people talking about podcasts and where they lose themselves listening to a podcast, and it keeps coming back to apparently this idea that when people vamp and they talk too much up top, some people don't like that, and they're like, they just want to hear the thing that people are there to talk about. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know how to do that.
It felt like a damn attack. It really did. It really felt like specifically they're pointing us out. Like I felt known, I felt seen, and I felt attacked.
I felt like these were subtweets about us that had nothing to actually do with us, but they felt so pointed.
Oh my God. It actually was, it's funny you bring that up too, because I was going to mention it. Coming clean here. We were supposed to record yesterday. Today is Monday. We're recording this on Monday, September 12th. We were supposed to record last night, and then we were going to record Resurrection tonight. Now we're doing a twofer. We're doing a twofer today, so you're going to get two bonus episodes.
You for that, by the way, because now I have to actually finish Resurrection after rewatching H20. Like, I was willing to wait a week, and then you were like, actually, let's speed the process up. And I was like, well, fuck you, because
we got to get ready for Halloween Ends.
Spoiler alert, I fucking hate Resurrection.
Yeah, I'm not actually a fan of it either. I'm not going to lie. Despite Brandon Hanna and Sabrina's,
Brandon Hanna tried. He really
have tried. They've tried to get us on board. But we'll talk about that this week later. This episode you're hearing is going to be on Wednesday. It's what you're listening to now, hopefully. Friday will be Halloween Resurrection. But I digress, bringing it back. We were supposed to tape this yesterday night. PJ got a hold of me at one point and said, I got a little bit of a heart out. I got something I'm supposed to do. PJ's got a life now. It's amazing how that happens.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Like suddenly the show ended and it was like, now I actually have to go live. So.
Yeah, gosh, I got to go live. That's the thing. So we're going to have a hard out. So it's going to come up and say, we don't have time. No time for love, Dr. Jones. We had no time for banter.
Okay, real quick. I'm going to interject here.
I know where you're going.
For it.
I did.
Dude, that fucking picture of Kei Kwan and Harrison Ford this weekend at D23. Are you fucking kidding me?
Warmed my soul so much.
I mean, I thought that picture might actually bring world peace for like half a second.
It did. In my heart, it did. In my mind,
like
everything was just peaceful.
There was a half a day where it felt like the world finally was okay. That's all we ever needed was to see Ke Huy Quan and Harrison Ford back together again.
Is there a chance he makes an appearance in Indiana Jones 5?
I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't.
I don't either.
Would I love it?
Yes.
Yes. Do I want to get my hopes up that he's in it? No, because his renaissance is kind of just starting. And so I don't want to get excited that they had already had the forethought to bring him back because, Indy 5 was shooting and basically done already by the time Theory of Everything had even come out.
There's a question.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. I keep doing that for some reason.
I do that too with that movie sometimes. It's kind of weird. I barely ever remember the title of that movie. I should. I'm always like, is it Everywhere, Everything, Everywhere?
Yeah.
Something all at once. Anyway. That movie. Here's a question. Did Indiana Jones already do reshoots at this point? Is there a possibility they maybe able to throw him in a reshoot, maybe?
Is there the chance? Absolutely. Am I...
Again... Don't want to get our hopes up.
I'm trying to keep my expectations low, especially now that and not low because I'm not excited for the movie. I'm the lone person in the world apparently who will go to bat for Crystal Skull as hard as I do. Yeah, that's right. I fucking said it.
Hello.
Oh yeah,
we do. Right. This is something we do together. Actually,
that's true. We are Crystal Skull fans.
We are Crystal Skull fans. Now, I'm not saying I like it as much as the original trilogy. But I still love it quite a bit, and have a great time with it. It's overrated.
More than one of the original trilogy movies.
That's fair. On a guest Temple?
I wasn't going to say it, but...
It's okay. You can say it.
Yeah. And that's not a dig at Temple, actually. It's wow, we're going down that rabbit hole. Temple is a good movie with a great third act. The problem is that there's not a lot happening the first hour of the movie.
Not going to lie.
It takes a bit.
Temple of Doom for me is one of those films that I got to see. There's about a handful of films that I have vivid memories of seeing in the theaters before the age of 10.
Yeah.
And it's Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Ghostbusters, E.T., Indiana Jones, and Temple of Doom.
Sure.
Those 5, I have the most vivid memories of that. So again, when it comes to nostalgia, maybe that's what gets it for me. That's why I do love the film. Absolutely fun with it. But I understand the faults of it. As an older man, I've seen some of the faults of it as it's grown.
Here's the thing. I still really like the movie. I think people take me as I'm being hard on it. It was my favorite of all those movies growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as I've gotten older that I don't gel as much with the pacing of the beginning of the movie. And so that's just a getting older hindsight. I like the vibe of the others a little more.
Right. Absolutely.
Still a great movie. Are you kidding me?
One of the best. One of the best.
One of the best. So
we're definitely doing Indiana Jones at some point on this podcast.
Oh, we have to.
Probably in time for 5. That's why we'll do it as.
Yeah. I part of me would be well, we have to do the Young Indy series too, but God, it gets complicated if we do that because that's a lot. That's
that might be
movies.
Patreon content maybe or something at some point down the line. I would mind doing it at some point.
I do like those though. If you've never seen Young Indy, they're all streaming now. Oh, Paramount had it. They may not have it anymore, but you can buy it on iTunes. I know that.
And on Prime, I think too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, except they're all missing a single episode, and it's the one episode that Harrison Ford is in.
Oh, is that true? I didn't realize that's they're missing from that. Oh, that's awful.
I was looking into it because I was going to buy it on digital. I own them all on DVD, thankfully, but for some reason, Mystery of the Blues is missing, and that's the one that actually has Harrison Ford in it.
I wonder if that's the reason they don't have the rights for Harrison.
Maybe. That's what I was wondering, if there was a potential, money thing.
Huh.
But I was a little bummed out because I so frequently go back to that as anytime anyone brings it up, I'm always like, that Ford actually has played the role 5 times to date before the new one comes out. And they go, what are you talking about? And I was like, he was in one of the Young Indy movies.
Yeah.
And he was shooting it while he was shooting Fugitive. So he's got the Fugitive beard as Indy. It's fucking great, actually. You should look, if you guys haven't, you can look it up. It's on YouTube. I know that clip is out there and it exists. So it's worth checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun time. I haven't seen all of the Young Indies. I'm not going to lie. I definitely saw most of them. I have to watch. There's probably some I know I've missed. I started one with my kid when I was earlier, but we didn't get very far into it on my rewatch. So that's something for the future. Maybe I will do as well. Another thing I want to bring up before we get into Halloween here, we both happened to see a movie yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
At the same time, it's kind of funny. We saw it together, just 1,000 miles away.
I didn't even tell you I was going either.
I didn't tell you I was going. I don't think either, did I? Tell us I was like,
no, I had no idea you'd seen it actually until we have a group message with our friend Jeff, and I put in there that we saw that I had seen Barbarian.
Yeah.
And PLD was like, yeah, I saw it too. And I was like, motherfucker, you didn't even tell me. I thought we were friends. You aren't even texting me anymore.
But you didn't text me you're going either.
I was going to text you once I saw it, and I did.
And I did too. That's how I did.
Once I fucking brought it up.
I literally was walking out of the theater like at that moment, dude.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
So there.
Sure.
My mediocre white dude. Come on. No, but either way, Barbarian, what a film. What a fun film. I heard it. I think you should. I was told to go in blind, so I went completely blind. I knew nothing about it at all. I think the only thing I knew is that Bill Skarsgård was in it. I think that's the only thing I knew. And I decided not to watch the trailer. All I had heard was that it was like the Malignant of this year, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty apt description. I wouldn't say it's very Malignant-like in terms of direction or anything like that, but it's
Malignant-like in the way that Malignant continues to ramp up once it starts, and it's like so unrelenting and continues to one up itself. That's what Barbarian does.
Right.
They are not nearly close to the same movie. This movie, no spoilers, is much closer to like Don't Breathe and Vacancy.
A little bit of Descent thrown in there too.
Yeah, dude, this movie's fucking wild because I went in blind too. I'd seen one teaser, and the teaser gives you nothing, as it turns out. Like, I went back and rewatched it, and I was like, oh shit, wow, this really gave away nothing. And also, did you notice that Bill Skarsgård produced the movie?
I did afterwards.
I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I think he's got a little bit of I think he's slowly like building. He's like a really slow burn building a good career for himself.
Yeah, definitely. And he loves genre work, as it turns out. We can see that. And so does Justin Long, apparently.
Yeah, I had no idea he was in the movie. That's why I was like, that whole part, I gotta say, it's like, this is a minor spoiler. So if you don't want to hear anything, jump like 10 seconds forward. It's a minor spoiler.
All right.
How, like, just really quick, it was just like, you mentioned how it amps up. And all of a sudden, like, it does this, like, turn in the middle. Yeah. And it has to start all over again to a degree. And I liked how it worked. I heard it while I'm watching the movie, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Like, what movie are we in now all of a sudden? But it worked. It absolutely worked in the day. But that's when Justin Long comes, and I'm like, holy shit, it's fucking Justin Long.
Yeah, the moment that happened, because to be honest, I was with Chance, and like the build happens to the moment you're talking about, and it cuts to black. And Chance leaned over to me and he goes, "Wait, is it over?" He was like, we were both kind of like, "Wait, what's going on?"
Right.
Cuts into where it goes next, and it was such an interesting swerve.
Yeah. It really was.
But then the way that swerve builds back into the rest of the story is fascinating, and it's really well done. This movie's really good.
It is really well done. It leans into things. It makes you, it's not predictable because it totally leans one way for a little bit, how you think it's going to go one way. And it's like, oh, it's not choosing to go that way at all. Okay.
No.
This is what we're doing now. Now we're doing something else. Okay. I get it now. I mean, you get there about 3/4 of the way through, but it's only when the movie wants you to know. And by then it's like a very effective way of filmmaking. So
yeah,
really, really, really enjoyed it.
I can't stress enough. If you guys get a chance, please go see it. And if you have the chance, please go in blind, because I think it makes for a much better, much creepier experience, if you will.
Yes,
and I'll say this: Barbarian's in my top 10 for right now. It finally knocked Scream out of my top 10, but it's so funny looking at my overall top 10 for the year. Mm-hmm. It is so filled with horror this year. We are eating good as horror fans.
Yeah, it has definitely been a very good horror year. It's been a very good horror couple of years, honestly, in terms of like, at least we're getting solid, fun entries all the way through. And I can't wait for the rest of it. We have a couple more coming up, I believe, that we know of. one definitely for us. Also, they have the what's the other one that's coming out? The Smile is another one that's coming out that I've heard some interesting things about. So yeah, you said it best. We are definitely eating good as horror fans.
Yeah, we really are. It's been a really good year. I'm looking right now. My top 10 has 5 horror films for the year.
Really?
Technically 6 if you add Multiverse of Madness and consider it like horror light.
Horror
so
adjacent. Yeah, I'd go with that.
Yeah, man, it's a good year for horror.
We also have, by the way, that's right. We also have Pearl coming out. It's one of the trailers I got to see. I forgot about
it. Comes out on Friday.
Is that soon? Jesus,
yeah.
I've been so bad with release dates. I have no idea when anything's coming out. It's not. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I'm ready to see it already though too. Oh, also, you and I both got to see Jaws.
We did.
And did you see it in 3D? I forgot to ask you.
I did see it in 3D.
I did too. I did not realize I was seeing it in 3D. Actually,
I was confused. My brother asked me to go, and I was like, "Well, let's make sure it's actually Jaws in 3D and not Jaws 3D."
Yeah. Yeah,
but he's like, he actually stopped and, I should really check that. And sure enough, it was just Jaws in 3D. But yeah, got to see Jaws in 3D. Very exciting time. I never got to see it in the big screen before.
I hadn't either, and I'd been wanting to forever. And the thing is I really always liked that movie.
Yeah, me too.
Seeing it on the big screen made me fall in love with it in a way that I had never loved it before. And I'm not a big 3D guy unless it's like a theme park attraction, really. So I was very hesitant when I found out I was seeing it in 3D that I was like, I don't know, man. As it turns out, it fucking ruled.
Yeah, they did it. Some of the shots just work well on the big screen, and the 3D was well made. They converted it very well. Sometimes conversion like fucks the film and like it's distracting. This wasn't really distracting at all. This just became immersive, and I was happy to see it. It wasn't like they didn't do anything flashy with it. It was just kind of more an immersive shot, and some of the Spielbergian shots that worked well in 3D. I was like, oh, cool. Maybe a little bit more.
The one especially that I was the most excited to see is not like a action shot or anything, and it was the one that worked in an incredible way, was the shot on Brody during the attack on the beach.
Yeah,
like that was the one I was most curious about in 3D, and as it turns out, that shot looked incredible.
Yeah, it really did. It's one of my favorite shots in the movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of ours, right? Yeah. It's iconic for a reason.
Exactly, and it worked so well. I will say also it's kind of fun. I got to bring my son to it, and he had never seen the movie at all. He's never been a movie guy. He'd been kind of slowly becoming. He watched a lot of anime and stuff. I think I mentioned that in the podcast before. But slowly but surely, he's starting to get into wanting to see some classics. Like I mentioned, I was saying Jaws. He's like, "Oh, can I go to that?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, absolutely." It was interesting getting my son's view on the film as a 16-year-old today, someone who had never seen it before, and he did highly enjoy it too. Although weirdly, I don't want to out him right now that some internet trolls are going to slam him because of opinions. He wasn't a huge fan of the famous Quint speech monologue because he goes, I really didn't understand what Quint was saying half the time. So I'm like, okay, I get the accent might throw you a little bit. It's like, okay. I was like, but he wasn't just an action guy either. He said he preferred shots of the beach and the build up to it. He said he really liked that part. It was weird for me. I'm kind of like, okay, you love the film. I was like, the other part was like, slow it down a little bit for me. I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
You know what I realized? I'm not going to give your son shit because he's like the nephew I never had, and I'll just give him a noogie later. It's fine. In watching it on the big screen, I never realized how claustrophobic the second half of that movie is. In the way, that movie takes place on the ocean, the second half, in open air ocean, and yet I feel trapped and stuck and I can't get away. And that's incredible for being such a open area to also feel like I cannot escape it. Mm-hmm. What a fucking feeling. Spielberg, man.
Oof. Wow. Spielberg is one of his best. It's one of his best for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, and continues to be, right?
Absolutely. It's hard to know. Although I guess I heard The Fableman's got a big reaction. So
I have a bold prediction that it's going to win Best Picture and Best Director next year at the Oscars.
I'm actually right there with you, to be honest with you. It feels like it's one of those things that it almost seems fated to be. I mean, we had the Spielberg Renaissance with West Side Story, which got a lot of love.
It was very close. Like,
a lot of love.
Yeah.
And anytime you see a director doing some semi-autobiographical stuff, it always seems to kick Oscars in the nuts a little bit. Go, boom, there you go. Come look at me.
And they love movies about making movies.
So it does seem like it's a perfect kind of a storm for him at this point. And just the buzz we're hearing is great. So I can't wait to see that on the big screen.
That trailer was emotional as fuck.
Yeah, I mean, he's got Paul Dano, who's a phenomenal actor at times, and then like
Seth
Rogen, interesting.
Michelle Williams,
of course.
Dude, that line in the trailer where Seth Rogen's like, "If you stop making movies, it will destroy your mother," and like the way he delivers the line, it's just
so good.
It's so good. I'm so excited. It's my most anticipated movie for the rest of the year. So.
I think mine too. I mean, outside of the series we're watching,
well,
for different reasons.
Sure. I'm just such a Spielberg head, so that for me is why I'm like,
I get it.
That's the one for me. And like, I kept waiting for the trailer. Also, I've got to get on my soapbox. I'm going to say something.
Here we go. Let's do it.
The internet's going to be mad at me. I don't expect a lot of things out of conventions. These days, I go in with a level head. We're going to get the information we're going to get. However, I'm starting to think that the new Indiana Jones doesn't have a title other than Indiana Jones. And I'm starting to be super fucking concerned and terrified over that. Everyone's hype about the trailer, and that's great. But there's something about those titles that is so good. And if you are not doing that, I'm going to be really upset.
Well, I mean, trying to view it from another side, it's funny that like the original was obviously just Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was definitely retroactively made Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So there's room for that kind of thing. But at the same time, I also agree with you. And if it's just Indiana Jones, it just feels like this modern day naming of films, like the Sausage Factory they're working with. And I think I don't say it dehumanizes the film because it doesn't make any sense, but it just makes them more cookie cutter. And I think it does harm the film. We talk about Scream now, and it's like, we got to clarify what Scream. The new one, Scream 5 2022. Just say Scream 5. Or if you want to give it a title, give it a title. And this is the same case. You don't want to say, you want to say Indiana Jones, you're going to say which one? I don't know, just Indiana Jones. Don't do that to this film. Don't do this to the film. Continue with the tradition. Indiana Jones and the what? Do something like that. Just whatever it is. It could be a shit name. Episode 1, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. Shit names, honestly. Not great names. They're pulpy names for the pulpy cereal, just like Indiana Jones is. But at least you don't have to sit there and you have to. Episode 1, you can just say Phantom Menace, you know what you're talking about. Crystal Skull, we said it earlier. Crystal Skull, we know what you're talking about. Indiana Jones deserves that.
I 100% concur with you, and I think that's why I'm getting so irritated. And they're saying that maybe the title will be revealed in November with Wakanda Forever when the trailer finally drops.
Is it going to be Wakanda Forever, or is it going to be Avatar 2 as the trailer drops?
No, I think it'll be with Wakanda. That was the rumor that I was seeing over the weekend.
I had heard maybe Avatar 2. I just want to throw it out there.
I mean, it could be, but I think it's smarter because the big play right now is Wakanda Forever.
Yeah.
There's every likelihood that Avatar does not perform the way that they're hoping. So Wakanda, on the other hand, will.
Yeah.
So
I feel honestly that I want to just throw it out there. We always talk about Avatar in our group chats on PLD projects because we have Richard R. Jarvie who loves the Avatar movie.
Nobody cares.
Movie.
No one, Jarvie.
But the funny thing is, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think it's sometimes one of the things where we get caught up in our little bubble sometimes. Right. Like our group doesn't really care much, but the casual general audience might have more.
Every time we go to the theater and the trailer comes on, my mom rolls her eyes and she gets real mad and she's like, "This shit again." And I'm just like, "Oh, I forget that." Like, my parents don't like Avatar. And they're always my weird metric on how I think things are going to go. Because if my parents seem interested, there must be something being done correctly because my parents, they kind of just deal listening to me.
Fair enough.
They don't have to put up with me, but they do because I'm their only child. So it's just kind of funny in hindsight to like see them being so frustrated about it and having to see that trailer every time, but then they're excited for Wakanda Forever. So that's why I sit there and I go, I don't know, man. Like I could see it going the other way. Like
I could too, but my dad, for example, could give a shit about Black Panther because he doesn't care about Marvel movies. He's
Right.
that demographic who doesn't care about superhero movies and he's like Avatar 2. Oh, that's a James Cameron one. That's that cool water looking one. That's kind of cool. I could see that again.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting.
So it's like
we got the battle of the parents over here.
at this point, yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
Anyway, I just really wanted an Indiana Jones 5 title. That was the only thing I was hoping for all weekend out of everything, and we got nothing other than I just kept hearing it called Indiana Jones, and that scares me.
Yeah, I got D23. A couple things like were nice. I mean, Star Wars stuff was pretty underwhelming overall. We did get a new trailer for Tales of the Jedi, which was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Got a trailer. Yeah, great trailer. Mando Season 3 trailer was nice to see. Got a new Andor trailer that didn't really do a whole lot for me. I'm already on board. It didn't like there was nothing new about it that really made me excited to anything more. But nothing else. I didn't get anything about like anything new. I thought we'd make it some footage from Ahsoka. I thought we'd make it some announcement about maybe a movie finally. Nothing. And then the Marvel one, my own personal.
Did they officially announce during the Ahsoka stuff who's playing?
No. They did not.
Interesting.
About cast. That came out in Hollywood Reporter that it came out like the day before.
Right, because everyone assumed that they were going to say it over the weekend.
Everybody thought the whole cast was going to be announced. Not a thing. They didn't drop a cast at all. Although that is very Filoni and Favreau. They tended not to ever drop cast. Like they never officially announced Rosario Dawson, I don't think, until it happened.
Can I say I am exhausted by the mystery box for Star Wars, and I really need them to move on.
Yeah, I agree. It just seems like it's like we don't need it anymore. Like I get it. I understood it for like 7. Because like when you're bringing it back for the first time, that's totally tipping in. But now, like this should be more of a hype machine, like Marvel's been doing, kind of the most part. Get everything out there as soon as possible. Although part of that is I think that's coming. It's just they're still in the process of that because Kathleen Kennedy is still. I think she's figuring out what to do with it. I think they're moving in the right direction.
She's like been the head of the studio for just under a decade still. Like this is still new ground. It's still and I think actually she's done a pretty good job, all things being equal. It's a lot of learning. There's a lot
she's making adjustments. That's the thing. She's making adjustments and she's not quite there yet. I think she's getting there. I think she'll get there. But
I think Indy 5 is actually going to be the one that is kind of like because as far as that goes, they really are going all in on treating it as a big deal because it's Ford's last movie. You had guys like Mangold come in. Lucas has apparently actually been involved, according to Mangold. So
that was big news for me.
That was big news for me too, because I assumed that Lucas was going to have nothing to do with it.
What surprises he? He still sticks around. That's the thing. George Lucas is like I guess it's because he sold it. He's kind of bored in his life. So he's kind of like, I'll stick around and I'll get involved. And if George Lucas shows up, you listen to him. That's just all there is to it. He is fucking George Lucas.
Right. So thought that was interesting. And overall, like, I think she's had a rougher go because she was new to it. But you know what, man? It was a fledgling studio at that point. People forget, like, they were not turning out movies.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't turning out TV shows. They had Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was not a lot happening. And so she's had to learn to function this thing with movies, television, books, comics. Like, that's a lot for one person, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you know what? I like what she's done so far.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. The other two things real quick I did want to mention. Indy Sala's back for Indy 5, which makes me happy.
Oh, is it official?
That's what they said. Yeah, so I'm happy about that. I think the only other thing about T23, for me, personal disappointment, Marvel. I was expecting a Hercules title, a Disney Plus show or something because of the Marvel trademarks that were and everything else. It seemed like it was bound to happen, and I'm left with disappointment on that end. Nothing at all. So, but oh well, what can you do? I think it's time we get into our meat of our show today.
The meat and potatoes?
The meat and potatoes, as you will. Let's get into this Halloween H2O. Here we are. It's only about a half an hour, and not too bad.
It's pretty good for us, actually. All things being equal, I got to be honest.
So screw you, subtweeters. Screw you.
But I'm excited because we are talking about the Steve Miner directed Halloween H2O. Steve Miner, a name very familiar for many fans of the horror circle because he was the director of 2 of the entries of the Friday the 13th franchise. So he was no stranger to this world.
Mm-hmm.
This is the return of Jaime Lee Curtis
as
Laurie Strode for the first time since 1981.
Wow. Yeah, and almost the return of John Carpenter at one point. This is a long project that had to happen. Like, considering the movie came out, the Halloween 6 came out, 2 years before this? A lot was done in 2 years. Or did 3 years? 95? Was it 95 for Curse of
Yeah, it was 95. So it was 90, 3 years. 3 years. But the thing we have to remember, and what's very interesting, is the film in which it was written. The original treatment for this movie did not have Laurie, but the story was basically the same. To a point. To a point. It was set at the school with Michael finding this private school and going after some of the people there, and then what was also a copycat killer.
Well, actually, before we even do that, we should make note that there was actually a Daniel Farron script who we found out from our friend Lego is not a very good person, despite what we had said this time. So I'm not going to get into that because I don't know much about it, but that's I guess you look him up. Some of the stuff he's done is not great, I guess. But Daniel Farron's, who had been the guy who wrote the Halloween Bible and had written Halloween 6, he actually had a treatment that was supposed to be the second half of Halloween 6. Was supposed to follow up directly after the Curse of Michael Myers. It would be called Lord of the Dead, and would involve Tommy Doyle. And he was going to discover that the entire Haddonfield was enveloped in this conspiracy to control Michael Myers. It was really kind of like I'm glad it didn't happen. Because quite frankly, I'm not as everybody remembers from last week, I'm not exactly the hugest fan of what was going on in 6. But Farron decided he didn't want to continue because his script for 6 was so cut to shreds that he didn't want to see it happen again. So he kind of finally went, you know what? Let's go. We're going to be done here. But then that's when they brought on Robert Zappia to do the Halloween 7 treatment at that point, which he called Two Faces of Evil. And the very interesting part here was this is, again, before Jaime Lee Curtis got involved. Like you said, it was a similar script. It's going to be a direct-to-video film. Halloween is going to be banished to direct-to-video, like some of the other higher-end franchises like Hellraiser gone to video. And a lot of them were going that way, and Halloween was going to be the next in the line. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of a scary time for Halloween fans in a way.
Yeah, and so the direct-to-video treatment was what basically became H2O in the process. Mm-hmm. Because the writers have talked about, they got the call and they said, hey, we got good news and bad news. And the bad news is we're scrapping your treatment. And he's like, okay, what's the good news? And they're like, well, we're going theatrical and we kind of want to use part of the treatment. And Jaime Lee Curtis is coming back as Laurie.
Right.
That's huge. That was like the big move when they found out that they were getting Curtis back, who had said she was never going to come back. And then they filled out the cast with, at the time, I would say closer to like CW, WB types. They really kind of went for like hot teen actors in a way. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the Halloween franchise has always been kind of full of that, but this feels very much like the first time where it's like Josh Hartnett, Michelle Williams, like it's set in a co-ed school, like, right. You know, LL Cool J's in it. They really weren't
teens. These weren't teens making their debuts or anything like that. They were well, yeah, except for Hartnett, but they were mostly legitimately, they had made their name, like LL Cool J had been a name before. Michelle Williams had done some stuff before. But so these are real solid people they had in place instead of just kind of grabbing the cheap talent that they could take advantage of, I think. Well,
and because when they went into this, everyone involved said that they were treating this as the final Laurie Strode film. Like that was going in. They wanted to end the series of 1, 2, and this. And so that was how they treated it going in. Now, of course, the Akkads had a very different idea on that.
Because the Akkads never want to kill off Michael Myers because
right.
Myers is their cash box.
There's some stuff we'll talk about towards the end, but that came down to what they did with the ending. And Kevin Williamson, who also produced the film and did some uncredited rewrites on it, actually had to go in and go, look, here's your workaround for the next movie, but we have to do this.
Right.
And so you can feel it in the movie. It works really well. And it almost makes me wish it had ended in 98.
Yeah, no, well, especially when Resurrection came out, but that's another story entirely. But the interesting thing about this is when Curtis came back, like the original idea was Jaime Lee Curtis, who had some panache at that time. She had some, obviously she had been a film star in a couple great films. She was not like just a young scream queen anymore. She was a legitimate actress coming back to her roots. She wanted to get everybody back together, which included getting John Carpenter back. And John Carpenter was originally happy to do so. He was like, there was at one point somebody said they didn't want it because he wanted no active part in the sequels anymore. But the truth was he agreed to direct the film, but he kind of he was charging $10 million as a starting fee. And then wanted some kind of like 3-picture deal with Dimension, and the Weinsteins, of course, are very notoriously like control and like other things. So they denied Carpenter, and Carpenter had to pull out of the franchise. Carpenter was trying to get a little bit more on the back end, considering he never got a lot of compensation for the original Halloween. This was kind of a little bit of a contention between Carpenter and Akkad. But when Carpenter left, there was fear at one point that Jaime Lee Curtis might also leave. But that's when Steve Miner came along, and Jaime Lee Curtis was definitely salved a little bit by Steve Miner coming in. See, at least it was a name enough in the horror world, etc. So it was okay for her. And luckily, she stuck around because it definitely worked out in their favor.
Well, and it's funny too because again, with them doing this as the finale, but also then contracting Jaime Lee to have to come back for one more movie if they did another one was such a cheap move, and then she so badly didn't want to come back for Resurrection.
Right. She wanted to end the series.
She wanted to end the series, and she also wanted to get out of show business. She said it while she was making H20 that was likely going to be her final movie. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's not what happened, but
rarely is when an actress has the last piece of work. They usually don't end up being the last piece of work.
No. But I'm really glad that ultimately that this movie comes out in 98 and it's actually pretty fucking successful. Makes $75 million on a $17 million budget. It's one of the more expensive, obviously, as far as Halloween movies at the time went, because they put the money into getting a cast. They got a really good filmmaker for these type of movies, and they treated it pretty legitimately.
Respectfully.
And I mean, I've told Paul this. H2O was a movie that had a huge effect on me as a kid just from the marketing, because I remember the marketing for H2O very specifically and the way it was being sold and the way that people felt about it. This trailer was everywhere. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I saw that trailer with so many movies when we would go. Probably because my parents were taking me movies I shouldn't have been seen, but still. I remember the posters. I remember it, like, it was such a big deal because Jaime Lee was back. Yeah. And that was the sell. And that had a weird imprint on me to the point that H2O kind of became that movie for me. In this franchise, as far as the sequels have always gone, H2O always stood out because it had such a weird impact on me as a kid. And that's why talking about it, and every time I watch this movie, man, I like it more. There's things that are always going to bother me, and we're going to get into it, but like, it's not the kind of, it's really cosmetic things more than anything, and less the movie itself that's the problem. And that's the thing that I think is the biggest takeaway, is that every movie that we've talked about in this franchise, most of the problems are cosmetic or not cosmetic, but are built in and baked into the thing. This is not that.
No, not at all.
And this might be the most well thought out sequel since Halloween 4.
Oh, that I think that's no might be about it. This is definitively the most well thought out.
Yeah.
In terms of at least what got to the finished screen. I mean, you could say there's an argument that somewhere that Halloween 6 was actually really well thought out by Farrens at one point, but then it was screwed over. I don't know exactly how that worked because I never really read anything else about it. So it could have been very well planned, but the execution was shit. This had well thought out plans and was executed pretty solidly overall. And I really want to touch base with this now. I think it's now the perfect time. You can't really talk about Halloween H20 without talking about Scream.
Mm-mm.
It's just like, it's amazing. It's, I can't think of another circumstance where a film from another franchise like so became like a sister film to a film from a different franchise in a way. But they really are tied. Obviously, Kevin Williamson was the screenwriter and producer, and so that's why they wanted him, because Scream was such a big success. They wanted. I mean, at one point, I believe at one point, if I remember correctly, I read that they also consider Wes Craven to direct Halloween H20 at one point, which would have been a very strange thing. The original Nightmare on Elm Street guy doing a Halloween movie. I kind of would like to have seen that. I'm not going to lie, because I love Craven. What Craven does, and it would have been really a great connection. Actually, would have been much better than Scream 2, I think. But I did like how that really, I mean, in Scream, you see the scene where they're watching Halloween. And that's kind of like paid back in this H2O where they're watching Scream too. It's like, it's this weird kind of juxtaposition. But Halloween H2O actually does, you can't help but feel a little bit like a Scream movie to a degree. It's the more serious version of Scream. It's not quite as mocking of itself, but it does have that kind of
it's more meta
vibe.
Yeah, and the funny thing is in speaking to that, a part of that even comes from the fact that Patrick Lussier does the editing, and he did the editing for Scream 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And he's well known for directing quite a few horror films in the time since, but he worked on the Scream franchise, so did Kevin Williamson, and obviously the Weinsteins produced those movies. So there is definitely a Scream-esque vibe of like a meta commentary on horror, but I think it's more of a meta commentary on Halloween more than anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Than it is the genre as a whole.
Also want to add on, the score by John Ottman was supplemented by some actually pieces of music from Scream.
Which was amazing. Used as the temp score.
Right, and they used part of it as well. But yeah, it's amazing how well they are connected. But it works though. It definitely works. And unlike Halloween 6's 90-ish vibe that hurt it for me, this was the 90-ish vibe done right. This was the Halloween updated that I thought it did work for me, even though it was a little bit 90s.
This one's actually a lot more timeless.
Yes, and that's why I like it.
Yeah. Because I think you're right. It's done correctly.
Give me a timeless film anytime. I understand you're going to have some things you're going to date it from where it is, but as long as it feels like a part of the franchise, and this one felt a part of the franchise. It looked like a Halloween movie for the most part, and it felt like a Halloween movie for the most part.
Yeah, and that's what works overall about this movie, and I love that it starts, and we immediately, because Pleasance has passed away, they immediately have to try to figure out how to supplement the fact that they can't use Pleasance. Mm-hmm. So they start with Michael having broken into his house and into Marion Chambers' house.
What a great pull. Marion from Halloween 1 too, and she's in there as she's living with Loomis and helping take care of him in his advanced age and everything else. They get her back. It's that way it's a great way to make a connection with right from the get-go. I mean, we open up, first of all, with the Mr. Sandman.
Yeah, which I made note of in my notes was Mr. Sandman. What a great throwback.
And that this whole film is full of those.
Yeah.
And when you can't have Loomis, you go for a character that made sense. It was either going to be her or Bracken. Those are the only two that would have made sense in the scene. To be honest, it worked. Marion made it work perfectly.
Yeah, and I loved the way this whole setup that someone ransacks the house and she goes in and she realizes that Laurie's file is missing and she immediately starts to go, oh no. And, shout out Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I love him in the opening as her neighbor, Jimmy. I think he's so fun, and again, the little meta commentary nod to the fact that he shows up in a hockey mask because Steve Miner had directed Friday the 13th.
Right. Yep.
But Levitt is so good as the opening kill. Even though we don't see the kill, but he's the setup for the opening kill. No. I love when it's discovered he's dead. He's watching Plan 9 from outer space. What a fucking place. But of course he would be watching that. I love the setup because immediately you're taken back to the original, and poor Marion is just trying so hard to warn everyone. The cops are barely showing up. Then once they show up, the one detective's going, well, Michael's not real. He's dead.
That guy, he annoyed the hell out of me. I got to be honest with you.
Well, he's awful.
Yeah. Real quick, I wanted to bring up, I love the fact that, first of all, JGL has some nice comedy when he's checking the house.
Yeah.
But it was, it's kind of funny.
I've been suspended 5 times already this year for getting crazy with my hockey stick.
Getting crazy with the sticks. And then he knocks out the stuff in the kitchen. They're like, yeah, they ransacked your kitchen too. I don't know what happened in there. So
Gotta
go. But it's funny how, like, really quickly, there's one thing that threw me from this film. It got to be night very quickly. Like in the daytime, he goes in to check, he comes out, it's nighttime. Like, wait, what just happened there? How long was he in there checking the house?
But that's one of the lesser continuity type things where it was like, we could have probably done better there. But it's kind of dusk-ish, I'll guess, is the way I'll look at it. But it happens very, very quickly.
Right. Automatically, it felt better than 5 and 6 at the beginning. Automatically, it felt like we are setting ourselves up. Exactly the point. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's what is such a breath of fresh air coming into it already, is that I suddenly feel like I'm watching Halloween again.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I think that's really important. And I say that as someone who defends Halloween 6, but like, it was really important to feel like I felt like I knew it again. You know what I'm saying? Like I felt like I wasn't missing the vibe anymore that had somehow escaped us, to be totally honest. And I don't know. It's just, it feels right.
Here's a question I have for you.
Yeah.
Marion gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing or bad thing?
I think it's a good thing in the moment. I wish she had survived? Absolutely. But I think that there's something about taking that character, and it's also kind of funny I say it this way because I will rail against Resurrection later, but the Resurrections is a little bit of a different case scenario.
Yes.
Marion is a good character that we've never spent a ton of time with. So she's familiar, but she's not a main. And so to take a familiar character and to make Michael murder her to get to Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie, I think is actually a really bold move out the gate that works.
Yeah.
To me, that makes sense, and you're doing it the right way. That's my thought. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I actually do agree with you. I wrote my notes. I think it was a good way to get attention for the audience without strongly overdoing it. Because JGL we just met, him dying is like, okay, that's one of the teens are going to die. Killing Marion, it does go, oh, okay, you have my attention. It doesn't kind of overdo it, like you said. Resurrection overdid it. Or something like killing Tommy or Lindsay would have been a bad move, I think, too. But Marion is someone who's, you know her, but you can kill her and be okay. The only thought that crossed my mind on it that I wondered, could it have been better if she became the Loomis of the film, so to speak? Because there is no real Loomis character in this film. And that's why it does feel a little bit off at times, but at the same time,
I would argue there is. And I would argue that is what Laurie became.
Okay. I mean, I guess I could see that.
It's a different version of it, but she has become Loomis in her own way.
Yeah.
But her way at first was dealing with it by hiding.
Right.
Until she totally snaps and she realizes, thanks to a really perfectly placed conversation in the movie, that, and again, talk about like kind of, I wouldn't even say it's meta, but I love the conversation with her and Michelle Williams, and they're talking about the Victor Frankenstein and that whole conversation where her character is basically like, this is you, Laurie.
Yeah.
Because she's dating her son and she's tired of seeing her boyfriend hurting. And so she's kind of pointing what has happened with Victor Frankenstein in the book to how she's become, which is why I think that the Loomis thing is actually very apt, because I think that you see that progression in her in the movie, except in this, she gets much more hands-on than Loomis really ever did.
Right. That's true too. I don't disagree. I kind of like when I asked you the question, I didn't really have an answer myself. Like I kind of do. I'm just saying it definitely is something that like it passed my mind. I was thinking about it. Could she have been used in a different way? I think she could have been, but overall it might have been. It might be to the best that she wasn't, because it kind of becomes like if you took it like the old hero's story. It's the young guy who has a mentor of some kind, even if it's not at all traditional. This is not like Loomis and Laurie were never a traditional mentorship. They barely even met each other, but they kind of served that similar purpose. Whereas Loomis was the older guy against evil, whereas Jaime Lee was the younger. The older person always usually dies, so the younger hero go on. With Loomis dying, it lets Jaime Lee Curtis go on and face Michael Myers on her own, so to speak. Which I do like the idea where it is Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers. One-on-one, no backup at that point, really. But yeah,
that's what it needed to be, and that's the point.
I did also want to throw out there. You mentioned the Frankenstein thing. I loved that whole callback where you see Molly in the class and she
looks out the window
and sees Michael Myers. It's such a great subtle callback to the original. There's a lot of those callbacks that are thrown in there. And you're like, I see. I feel like Leonardo DiCaprio the whole time. I see. Well,
you're Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in it. Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. There's a lot of that. I made a lot of little notes while I was watching it, down like music cues with Mr. Sandman, the little things like this. I love the opening. Once you get past the kill and you have this opening, Tom Kane does his best to voice Donald Pleasance, because they tried to use the audio from the original movie, but the problem is the only audio they could find was already mixed with the sound effects and the music. So they couldn't separate it. So they needed a voiceover artist. Tom Kane came in to do the Donald Pleasance monologue about the darkest eyes. And it's a great moment. And the music, the John Ottman's Halloween theme is great.
It is.
It really is. It's a little orchestrated up in a different way, and it feels grand, which it should for this movie.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I agree with Tom Kane as well. Tom Kane, I actually could barely tell the difference. Like, I almost thought it was unused Donald Pleasance dialogue, possibly. I thought that because he did such a great job. And that's a great point too. I think the way they do that is a great exposition way. Just look at all the newspaper clips while you hear Dr. Loomis talks about it. It gives credit and tribute to the character, which we don't get, while getting some of that exposition out of the way. It makes a lot of sense. I do want to throw in there the cops, though. I do know that the early version of the script, the cops had a bigger role. There's supposed to be a whole storyline with them tracking down what's going on, and they actually make it out to the school and everything else. And that's another reason why I thought about it. I think because I actually like the older cop. Yeah, older cop seemed like he had a kind of gruff feel. He actually felt a little bit like a Loomis substitute to a degree, also in a way.
Or even a Brackett.
Or Brackett, exactly. I actually thought the younger guy was going to be probably Brackett to the older guy Loomis. Loomis he felt like the old gruff, I believe Michael Myers, and the young guy's like, I don't really know if I believe Michael Myers kind of thing. And that was the whole dynamic towards the end. But the whole sequence did get cut out, and it might have been for the best, although it does make for a very slim film. This is not a very long film.
No, this movie's like 86 minutes, and it doesn't waste any time. It fucking clips, man. Mm-hmm. This movie is fast-paced, almost too fast-paced for its own good, because by the time it starts, it's over.
Yeah. That's what it feels like.
Once you get to the big third act stuff, the movie's basically over. And it just happens so quickly, but everything leading up to it is still super well done. But I love the exposition because it gets a lot of what we want to know about Laurie out of the way.
Right.
And then she kind of brings it back around later. There's a great scene with her and Adam Arkin where she starts to recount her real story because she's living under a fake name as Carrie Tate. And she's the head mistress of this little school in Summer Glen, California. And I love that she kind of went into this hiding thing, and now she's got this son who was born, and she's trying to take care of him. And I love that the movie opens with her having a nightmare and seeing flashes from that first film of Michael coming through the door, and you see this moment where Hartnett gets in there and he's trying to calm Laurie down, and he goes in and she's got all these bottles of different prescription pills, and he's looking for the one for nightmares, and he closes the door, and it's like the sigh, and he puts his fist on it, and you can just see he's tired. He's been through this for so long. It's been 17 years of the same thing, and he's so tired of hurting. But he doesn't realize really that his mom is also hurting.
Right. And
he thinks she's overreacting.
Yeah, I think he gets it, but it's just been so long that he feels like it's time to get over it, because it's been 20 years and 17 of them for him at this point. And he's like, he's never seen anything about it. He's never seen Michael. This is not like, at this point, I think he feels like he's tired because he feels like he's old enough. He knows he's leaving soon. Like, he's a 17-year-old man who's going to move on to his own. And I think he's worried about his mother. He's worried about, like, well, who's going to take care of her when I'm gone? At the same time, no, I have to live my life. I can't be beholden to her.
Which is a whole conversation that's literally had about responsibility. And he goes, I'm no longer responsible for you. Like, I need to be a teenager.
Right. Exactly. And he's a good guy. He's a good kid. Like, he's not like a bad kid about it. He's just a normal teen in a tough situation.
Hartnett has said that he never liked his performance in this movie, and that which is weird because I actually really like him in this movie.
I think it's a very solid performance.
I'll say this, and this is not a dig at anything with Trudy Greer or anything in 18, but it was the one thing I was hoping that they that they would have brought Hartnett back. Just because I really like his character. And I really would have liked to get to hang out with him more. And it's a little bit of a bummer that his entire Halloween history is one movie long.
That's very sad. Well, and then it was supposed to be at one point. It was going to be 2 movies long at least. He was going to come back for Halloween 8 at some point. I don't think we ever found out, even in the book, like, why it didn't happen. It just, whatever. I don't know if he was ever approached about it.
I'm going to guess he was not.
Which just seems to be that's the case. That's what I think too. Which is and if that's the case, that's fucking bullshit. If he decided he didn't want to come back, that's on him, and I can't blame. I can't.
Yeah.
But if you have him there delivering a solid performance and get some connectivity back to the movie that just brought you back, I'm complaining about 8. I can't do it. Let's move on.
No, it's totally fair though, because we're talking about his character, and basically that was why I brought it up, because I really like this character, and I really would have liked to see more with him. And I think that that's the biggest fault of all the sequels in some capacity. This is, again, we're not really getting into it. I just wish that H2O had properly been followed up on in some capacity if you really felt the need to, instead of the versions we've gotten since. But it is what it is. And at the same time, very happy that this is the kind of trilogy capper, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Fully agree with that. I do. Okay, so we have Laurie as the functioning alcoholic, basically, at this point.
And she's on lots of meds. But it felt like a legitimate place for her. And I know, again, I mentioned before, we're not gonna go into too much into 2018's version. It's hard not to compare them a little bit because they are actually obviously 2 sides of the same coin. They're both the follow-ups from 20 years and then 40 years without existing in the same universe, really. 2018 uses the bones of H2O a lot. In a 100%. Lot of ways.
They just make they make Laurie's character more angry, which is a different choice. I know you prefer this choice. I like both for different reasons.
I like both for different reasons also. Again, this is my Halloween 4, so I'm always going to prefer this take on the material. 100%. But I mean, look, I don't want to get into it because we'll get to it when we get to 2018, but there's a scene in 2018 that is almost a direct lift from something that happens here, but then shifted a little bit, involving a bathroom stall. 2018 lifts a lot of H2O's ideas and uses them again. And it's like, I just kind of wish that people would put respect on H2O's name. That's how I feel, because I think H2O gets overlooked a lot because everyone's like, yeah.
You feel that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
I talk to people all the time who think that H2O is like totally fine or whatever, and they're gaga about 2018. And I'm like, they're the same picture. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of the vibe I get.
It's interesting that the type of vibe you get, because I mean, not that I don't know if I get that vibe. I mean, obviously the Halloween 20 is pretty well respected in the circles of horror, especially. But I'm not going to say your take isn't valid because that's what you see. Of course, you're going to see it also because you're more defensive of this film than I am. So I get that to a degree too. But yeah, you're not wrong. 2018 takes a lot from this film. But then again, I think the trilogy, the whole new trilogy, again, we haven't seen Ends yet, obviously, but Halloween and Halloween Killed both take a lot about the whole, like those writers and directors, they actually take a lot from the entire saga.
Oh, no, totally. But 18 in particular feels...
Yeah, because it's definitely the same structure. Same structure.
Yeah.
We gotta take it the same place. We gotta take that Laurie is functioning as an adult after this trauma. That's the bare bones of the whole thing.
Yeah. And I think that's why I get, like, when I think about 2018, I think I would almost like it more if it was more of a continuation from H2O, if Hartnett was in the Judy Greer and role, and that's only because then we already have a connection.
I agree. I also see why they didn't do that, because
I do too, because they're doing, and you're separating from the rest of the canon, and I get it. But it's more of a, for me,
right.
You could have built off of what had happened in this movie to 18 in a capacity.
It would have been interesting to see. It would,
you know what I mean?
The function alcoholic from Halloween 20, and then seeing the hardened one. Although it'd have to have the weird. You'd have to figure out what they do at the end of 20. This film kind of makes it a little definitive. I mean, obviously they had to find a way to work around that. But that could. I wonder if they didn't have that finale, they could have done that, because quite frankly, Halloween H2O also does a good job of, like, well, in theory, it's Halloween 2, then Halloween H2O. And they kind of like don't talk about 3, 4, well, obviously 3, but 4 or 5 and 6 aren't really talked about. But they don't also discredit 4 or 5 and 6 either. They kind of like do that kind of like vague, wishy-washy. They kind of use the same story that
Laurie died in a car accident.
But it explains that. They explain some things here and there.
Also, that makes her a deadbeat mom, and that kind of sucks.
Exactly the case. Or maybe, no, like in my own head, maybe she doesn't know that her daughter survived somehow. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. But they don't discredit it. They kind of just do some timey-wimey things. So Halloween H2O or 2018 could have done the same thing and not denied that this stuff happened without having to be beholden to it completely, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I do not disagree with you.
Speaking of the bathroom sequence, though, what did you think about Michael not killing the mother?
Actually, I made a note of that while I was watching the movie. It's really interesting. Michael leaves quite a few people alive.
Right. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be honest with you.
And I'll say this. It actually doesn't bother me, because if you go back and think about Halloween, he leaves quite a few people alive. He doesn't attack everyone. The murder count in Halloween is real low.
Yeah.
So this kind of feels like a harken back of, he's more like the monster that is in the shadows, but just kind of lurking, and until you are in his line, he doesn't necessarily go for you. And in this one in particular, it feels like he's directly on the line of going, fuck it, I am just kind of going for the family and the people who get in my way.
I guess I see that too. I also see the opposite side, which makes me feel a little less solid about it. Is like, I feel like, again, comparing to like Halloween 4, like he basically kills people when he needs something from them. He needs the tow truck. He needs the jump pursuit. He kills them. So he has these people alone, and he needs the car, and really doesn't want them reporting his car if he's driving out to Colorado or where he's driving. Where does it take place? In California or Colorado? Where is it?
California. It's Northern California.
Northern California. So him killing her, and then not killing her, and the mother leaves it like it was a little. It felt a little off to me. I'm not going to lie. It does a game changer, but it. Yeah.
But to your point, right? That's kind of why I like it, because it does feel like that throwback to the first movie where so many people kind of would interact with him only to live and not really realize that how close that they had come. Because I think of that scene with Tommy when he's walking out and, he bumps into Michael. That's one of my favorite moments in that first movie.
Well, it is mine too, but the difference is that's a public scene. Like they're in public.
No. Sure. But the reason I'm kind of breaking it down that way is like, then you think about the scenes of everyone standing outside the hardware store and he rolls up and he's right behind him and he's watching and then he peels out. And, the later movies, he became a little more animalistic, but that first movie in particular, he doesn't kill just to kill.
Right.
Like a lot of the time, it seems like it's a lot more methodical than that.
Right.
And, then it takes the second movie to be like, well, the reason it was methodical is everyone was around Laurie, et cetera, et cetera. But the kill count is very low in the first movie. For them to kind of go back to this and have Michael being more in the wings of these people's being, and then having him kind of shark from Jaws it and go after specific people who he's now had his like line of sight on, I find that much more interesting. That to me is the way that I almost prefer Michael.
I can see that. I think I would have preferred, honestly, though, like I think would have preferred better for myself is not to have it a bathroom scene. I'd have like the mother having had to pull over the side of the road and the kid goes to the bathroom in the woods, and you used to see Michael's truck and you'd see Michael get in the car and drive off in the car. Like, and that's the way you can leave him alive and still be that way without having to because he has to go into the bathroom, take the purse. People get scared, like he sees them and everything else, and it just seems like it's a confrontation waiting to happen in a claustrophobic space, and that throws a little bit for me.
I also think arguably that's the point. And I hear where you're coming from, but part of the point is to build that tension and build that claustrophobia, only to have the release of they survived,
right?
And it's actually a really nice moment because again, as Joe Bob says, you can't put kids in danger. That's still like a taboo. And so like you can't kill the kid, but you can put them in a lot of danger. And it's very interesting to do that in a movie like this. Cause at this point, like we hadn't really had any of the children in the Halloween movies really get murdered.
Right. I guess that does make sense to a degree.
Yeah. That's a weird thing, but I did make the same note because similarly, when he gets to the school, LL Cool J is out there and he like totally walks past him.
Right. That didn't bother me.
Right.
That didn't bother me.
But it's just funny because that was when I made the note in my head going, wow, he kind of left a lot of people alive in a way that he hadn't in the past. And then I started to go, well, the original.
Right. Okay, my exact note when I said it was Michael not killing mother and daughter, not sure how I feel about it, to be honest. That was my note I wrote because I'm not sure. I still can't say definitively I liked it or not, but I get your point. Your point makes it work a little bit better for me. Still not entirely sold, but we'll move on from there. I guess it's good. But it's a solid. I see where you're coming from. It's definitely a choice that was made.
Yeah.
It doesn't derail it entirely. It's just an interesting sidebar. We do get to the school. One thing I definitely have to say about the school, I like, unlike a lot of the Halloween films, I do like a lot of supporting characters in this. Having Janet Leigh as a secretary was just a beautiful thing. I love that. It's
one of my favorite nods in the movie. And again, this is kind of that meta nature that they took to it. And then to have Janet Leigh have this whole speech to Laurie where she's like, I've seen you here before. I don't like what, I've been there.
Yep.
You don't want to go through this. And just the whole way that it's handled is so good. And then she walks out and it's the car from Psycho.
There's even the quote from the Psycho score and the score. It's beautiful. And she gets the line. The Star Wars is like Star Wars. I got a bad feeling about this. Halloween is the everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Yeah,
and she gets that line at being a turtle to Jaime Lee. It's a good touch. It's a good bonus. That's kind of throwback I love.
And to have both them together, it's just so sweet and so cool. And because I mean, look, Janet Leigh was the original Scream Queen, only for her daughter to pick up that mantle.
Right?
Like,
it's wonderful.
Come on, it's such a good moment, man.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, you got Mr. Brennan, you got Adam Arkin, who is a really, really good piece of work in this film really for the most part. I like a lot of what he does. There's some stuff at the end I'm kind of like a little about, but overall, definitely was a strong addition to the movie. A great character, great way to have exposition done. He's just a really, really solid piece. LL Cool J. I do want to bring that up for a second before we go on further. LL Cool J I find is a very polarizing character. I find a lot of people don't like him in the film. And I get why, because it's one of those things you said before, you brought it up, you said like it's a name actor. And having LL Cool J in a Halloween film, it is a little distracting.
Sure.
It does feel a little like it takes me out just enough. Not nearly as bad as, say, Busta Rhymes, but it does take me out of it just a smidge. What are your thoughts on LL Cool J in this?
I actually like him in the movie. I'm not going to lie to you. I hear where you're coming from. The truth is that for me, when I saw the movie, I was very young, and I didn't really know who LL Cool J was. So now, in hindsight, do I know who he is? Absolutely. But for me, I was always buying into it because I never really knew I knew of LL Cool J, but he definitely has a very distinctive feel within the film. I kind of love this idea that he's the random security guard who all he wants to do is write romance novels. And his wife is like, "You're really bad at this." And she's begging him to work with her dad as a publisher.
I do like that he has the story, like the background that's very fleshed out like that. It's a nice touch. It's a nice way to add to a supporting character.
So like Cool J is kind of doing his thing. I'm not going to say he's like the world's best actor in it, but he's super fun in it. That's kind of just my takeaway. I like the back and forth with him and Hartnett at one point in the movie. He really commits. And he was so excited to be in the movie. I remember like that was a big deal for him. And he was like, "I'm going to do this movie. And I'm taking acting seriously. And I'm going to really try here."
Right.
And you feel it. You really do.
Absolutely. I do. I have something else to say about LL Cool J's character, but I'm going to save it to the end, so later on it has it. One of the my next note I had in there after LL Cool J was I loved the Chardonnay scene.
Yeah.
It was such a great show, not tell kind of thing. But I mean, like they never come out and really say much about the alcoholism. It's just kind of shown, but it's shown in several subtle ways. And that was the best one. Obviously, if you don't remember seeing the movie, they're at like a cafe or something like that, and she has a glass of Chardonnay. Adam Arkin says something has to leave. She orders another Chardonnay, and the waiter's like gives her a look. It's like, "Just do it." And like she chugs the Chardonnay, gives him the glass, and gets another one. And it's acting like it's the same glass of Chardonnay that she always had. It's a nice, just again, nothing said about it. It just says this is who Laurie Strode is at this point.
Well, and then only for it to kind of play into the next scene, because one of the things in the movie is that Hartnett's character wants to go on this Yosemite trip that the kids all go on at the private school, and she won't let him go. And so in doing that, there's this like give and take of them talking about their relationship and kind of the way things are. And so she's so protective of him. He sneaks out of the school for lunch with his friend. And that's kind of the catalyst of the next sequence is Laurie's out at lunch with Adam Arkin. Hartnett has snuck off campus. LL Cool J turned his back long enough to let them out. And Laurie finds him out on the street, and legitimately right before she walks into frame, he's sitting there talking about his mom, and he goes, "She's a functioning alcoholic."
Right.
And he says it out loud because he's been dealing with it. And, it's all because his friend stole some wine from the liquor store that they were walking past.
It's well done. It's just all subtly and well done. I like it quite a bit. What I have next in here, I did again as I wrote down very lean movie and doesn't waste time for anything. But interestingly, I also write that this Halloween, for being an 86-minute long movie, it goes a long time between kills. I had it when I was watching at that point. I'm kind of like, did we have even had a kill yet? Kind of like vaguely forgot about JGL in the beginning and Marion, like really briefly. They had the kills in the beginning, and then there's a long time between kills. That's why I thought about when the mother and daughter get saved, also, or don't get killed rather. For a '90s movie where like you get notes, especially from the Weinstein's Dimensions, we got to throw a kill in here. It's been too long. They refrain from that, and it works. It works because of it. It still has a nice slow build. In an 86-minute movie, it's tough to have a slow build that works, but it does.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they do because, we get 3 deaths out the gate of the film.
Yep. And
then it takes its time to build. We hang out with all these characters because, there's the Janet Leigh character we talked about. Then you have Jodie Lynn O'Keefe as Sarah and Adam Hand-Beard as Charlie. They're the friends of Will and Molly. Molly is Michelle Williams' character. And that's the thing that works with this movie in particular is that the friend group is small. There's not a lot of characters in this movie. And so for an 86-minute film and for how quickly it's tracking along, I like these characters. Yeah. And it's because we're actually spending a little bit of time with them. They're not like well developed really, but they're fun and I like the dynamics. I like the characters.
They feel like a group of friends that aren't just put together for a reason. They feel like they've been together for a while. Josh and Michelle have they're the 2 more important ones, and they get a little bit more development, get a little more time. But their 2 are just solid there, and a little bit better than just placeholders, just enough better than placeholders where you care enough about them, or when they do face Michael, you care about what's going to happen to them.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of the friends and this group and these characters we like, we were kind of talking about Adam Arkin also. And here's the thing that I really like in this movie is that there's 2 points in the movie kind of full of exposition of different sides of how the Schroeds see the events of what has happened.
Right.
One is Hartnett when John is telling Molly about why he never celebrated Halloween before. And then the other is from Laurie's side talking to Will, played by Adam Arkin, about what had happened and who she really was. Right. And she decides to come clean. Both of these are such great examples of understanding the history and presenting it in very interesting ways.
Right.
Because to Hartnett, he is seeing it as, my mom is crazy. This dude's never coming back. Like, it's time for her to move on. And now I'm going to finally celebrate Halloween to enjoy it, and et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Laurie's is like this vulnerable moment of opening up to someone and going, this is who I really am. And I need you to understand who I am in order for you to love me the way that you think that you do.
Right.
And I've always loved that. I've always thought it was so well done and so well crafted, and it's always worked for me.
Very fair. Very fair. I agree too. I think this is the most. I wrote down in the sequence. Confession of Brennan is cool. That's all I wrote. But it is. It's a very well done sequence. It tells so much without having to tell a whole lot. Adam Arkin is brilliant in this scene as he comes to the realization of what she's saying. Like, I love the playfulness at first. The kind of like he thinks he's just kidding.
Serious.
And all of a sudden he's like, "Oh shit, this is real." It's very, very well done. I gotta say, I liked exactly it sets up for both their characters very well. One thing I did want to touch base before this, though, it actually calls back to the bathroom scene in a way too. Right before this confession scene is the first time Laurie sees Michael on the grounds. She turns, sees him, does the close. Like early in the film, she saw him in like a reflection. She closed her eyes and he was gone.
Yeah.
This time she actually sees him. She thinks it's another vision. She closes her eyes. He's still there. Closes her eyes. He's still there. And then all of a sudden, Mr. Brennan shows up and like scares her and everything else. But Michael's not there anymore. And I was like, I actually like, do I have a problem with this as well? Because like Michael just turns and goes, and he's going right for, again, it kind of attacks what you were saying earlier in a way. Because like Michael's going straight for Laurie and then still decides to kind of, nope, not going to do it now. But like, so because he doesn't know that Laurie is seeing these visions ever. And so I'm not sure why he left. I kind of chalked up, well, he did stalk her a little bit in the first film. Obviously, he's definitely a stalking character. Maybe this was like a panther.
That's kind of how I took it. Is that it's almost like it's like that playful, not necessarily playful being the right word, but it's definitely that he's kind of messing with her, right? Because now he knows. And the other thing that was interesting, and it really doesn't go anywhere or have any bearing, but I thought it was very interesting that they took the fact that 17, one of the Strodes turning 17 is what drove Michael to breaking out specifically on the nights that he did. Right. Or that the Strodes being 17 at the time, because his sister was 17, Laurie was 17, and now John is 17. Right. And that realization, it kind of works. It makes it a little kind of murky. Like it's not necessarily a thing we needed, but I'm glad that they do it. Because it actually gives more reason for him to actually finally show up again versus just showing up. Right. Considering Laurie hasn't seen him since 2.
Yeah, that's very much so. It's very kind of in that way. I kind of was like, okay, I get it. I get what they're doing. I wasn't sure I loved it or not, but it was kind of cool, and it led to some cool moments. So I kind of let it pass. Not a big of a deal. There's a lot of throwbacks, like we mentioned at one point.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of throwbacks.
I hear you. It's just one of those things that I've always chalked up to as I said, just kind of the playful nature or rather the hunter's nature of the character. And the thing that I really like is that the rest of this movie becomes a cat and mouse game, because that's kind of the beginning of it. And then one by one, he slowly starts picking everyone off. And that's the thing I've always liked. It now becomes Charlie, who unfortunately becomes the first victim. And this is actually a really great one. I like the way it plays out. There's a great shot of Charlie in Michael's eyes where you kind of see in that moment, that's the moment we realize Michael's really fully kind of back. And I just like that look and seeing that reflection in his eyeball in that way. Normally, I'm not big on seeing that, but there was something about it in this in particular where it kind of took me into the mind of the killer in like half a second. Mm-hmm. That I really liked. And it's funny because there's a whole sequence in this involving his hand down in the garbage disposal.
Which is going to come back into play as we know.
And what's interesting is that apparently Jaime Lee Curtis was like really big on that scene. Yeah. And she originally wanted Charlie to die in like have his hand chopped up. So I'm very curious to see how that'll play out in Ends, because apparently like that was a whole thing for her. I had no idea really. And so kind of interesting.
I think it's time to bring it up now since you mentioned the eyeball thing.
The mask.
This is the part of the movie where we get negative, and I'm sorry. This might be the worst mask in the whole franchise.
It's really bad. There's no defending the masks.
It's so bad, and like if you haven't watched the series like we have, and you're just like listening for the hell of it because you like us,
thank you, number one. We appreciate you.
Right. It might seem like a stupid complaint in a way, but it was so bad that it actually derails my love for the film and it really damages it because it takes me out every time I see it. It feels like a college kid got a Michael Myers costume at KB. Or something and dress up for a college party. So like when he's supposed to be scary and intimidating, I'm like, I'm doing the Michael head tilt. Really? That's what we're going with at this point. And I think part of it, I mentioned this off screen, not just the mask. I hate when you see Michael's eyes.
Right.
I mean, I know he's supposed human and all that stuff, but when Loomis gets into the whole face of evil, death of blackest eyes, that's one thing the 2018 trilogy has done so perfectly.
Oh yeah,
the eyes are just
nailed that.
Perfect black pitch eyes. You don't see the eyes ever. Halloween 4 did that very well too. A lot of people like the Halloween 4 mask. I love the Halloween 4 mask because it's a very blank face. You don't get any expression on it at all. It makes Michael so much more intimidating, so much more evil, so much more boogeyman. It works so well, and this kills it. I honestly think this would be so much a better film for me. It actually could be my second favorite film in the Halloween franchise if it wasn't for this mask. That's how much it actually detracts for me.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I mean, I'm not going to argue on you. You know, I get it. I really do.
I think maybe it's me too. I think about it. I think maybe I don't know if it's the way the film is colored, but also like his jumpsuit seems like a much brighter blue maybe than like it used to be. Like, I mean, it might have been just a screen I was watching it on, but it felt like it was. Again, I think it has to do with the way it's filmed. This is the 90s part of the Halloween, which does date it a little bit for me. The coloring of it is a little bit of it. It seems a little more brighter and warmer than it should be overall for this kind of film.
Sure.
Again, that's not going to kill it for me, but it does definitely date it. Whether it killed it for you or not, that's up to you. But it definitely does date it a little bit for me.
No, it's fair. And I mean, they had a lot of behind the scenes stuff with the mask where the masks weren't quite working. So they would change certain other ones. Then there's even a moment with the CGI mask in the movie.
Right.
Like, it's bad. It's the one thing I really honestly can't forgive. The mask is really not great. There's some great moments with it early on. Like, so actually, it looks great in the sequence in the bathroom stalls.
Right. Yeah.
But it's from far away. That's a part of it. Like that scene's great. There's a couple of those moments,
right?
But it's not. It's more few and far between than it should be. Is the issue.
All right, that's all. I don't want to harp on it because I could harp on it the whole rest of the episode, but that's just where it is. It is what it is.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
Interesting enough, the next kill is Charlie's girl Sarah. Very Michael. The killer, and I really should bring back talk about throwbacks. Maybe it's me looking into it. But I feel like the dumbwaiter sequence was very much a callback to Halloween 5.
I think there's
the laundry
some potential of that. I think there's some potential of that. That
is like universally, like a lot of people don't like Halloween 5. It's probably one of the more maligned movies out there. We both say that it's pretty maligned, even though I liked it more than you. But universally, that feels like that's the sequence that worked the best in Halloween 5 was the laundry chute sequence that they had with Jamie. This feels like a similar way to do that. It did amp tension, and it works just really well here too. The amping of the tension is really nice. It's
also the shot of him looking up at one point.
Oh, so good. It goes in like that. Yeah, so good. And the knife going through the door and stuff. It's so good. All this very powerful stuff.
And that leads to them finding the body once they see the blood. And this is what I like. This whole, again, once this starts, the movie is like clipping even harder than it already was because this all happens very, very quickly right before it ends.
It's like boom, 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 because there's not enough people to get through. They got to get through the people and get to it.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he hangs her afterwards. It's very a callback. It's very much that's what Michael does. He's artistic in his killing. He likes to showcase his killings. He hangs her up in the electric thing, which gets, of course, Josh Hartnett really going and Michelle Williams really going at that point. It makes that's what amps it up even further and makes it go even clippier.
Yeah, and that's when we finally get to the chase sequence through the hall. Which originally had the Halloween score, which was taken out for the Scream score.
Yeah.
Weird moment. But it leads to Jamie seeing Michael for the first time. And that's a great scene. Even if you don't love the mask, like it's just a great moment because she sells it so well.
She does. She really does. And he does sell it to the actor. That's when he does the head tilt for the first time. And it feels like there it is. It is.
Because you were waiting for it, and that they're in the school, they're running through, which has another callback because Laurie opens the closet, and she kind of goes, "Oh fuck," and and realizes she's not going to do that. But what does Michael do? He goes straight for the closet, and he starts tearing through the closet just like he was anticipating, and she comes up behind him and clubs him over the head with the fire extinguisher.
Yep, that works well.
It's a great moment.
So get the kids out. Now we have the interesting part now where Brennan, Adam Arkin comes in, and we have the moment where he has the gun and ends up shooting LL Cool J.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a callback in a way. I guess I think it's a throw. I think, again, maybe looking into it too much, I think it was their way of trying to throw back the mistaken deaths of Halloween 4 when the son comes around. Then Michael kills Brennan at this point. This is the part where I want to talk about LL Cool J. Is I feel like they chose the wrong character to come back, to be resurrected at the end, so to speak.
I don't really disagree.
Because LL Cool J coming back, LL Cool J just seemed dead, first of all. Seemed really dead. And then he comes back and just like, wait, what? What just happened? And like, it doesn't do anything. Having Adam Arkin survive that leads to such a better ending for him and Laurie. Now, I know the ending of Halloween H2O doesn't lend to a happy ending given what happens towards the end, but I still feel like Brennan was a better choice for him to. If one of those characters is going to come back at the end and be fake dead or whatever you want to call it, it should have been Brennan.
Yeah, but there's also, I mean, look, there's every case. Yeah, words are hard.
Right.
There's every chance that had they done that correctly and done it that way, Resurrection can also then be a different movie, because then you can bring him back at the beginning and it could be dealing with the fact that she's been in prison or in this 100%. Psychiatric ward, and he's trying to defend her going, you don't understand.
There's so many ways Halloween 8 could have been better. But yes, that's it.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like, to your point, you're right, because there's a world where there is still a happier ending, quote unquote, if you would, for those characters. 100%. And so I do wish that Arkin had survived, because I really like him. I really like the Will character, and I really like his relationship with Laurie. And that's part of, you know what? I think that's part of what I like about this movie so much more than some of the stuff since. I like seeing Laurie in a functional relationship. I like seeing Laurie trying to live in a way that she doesn't feel like she's been written off. And that works for me. And I like that for her, because she's damaged, understandably. And so for her to find some sort of peace and a relationship with someone, even if she was lying, but then opening it up and seeing that he wasn't going to judge her and he was actually there to like try to help her, it's nice.
Absolutely. It was very nice to take it away, just like kind of throw it back even more. I mean, I guess you could argue that having him get killed is kind of like it takes Laurie back down to what happened. It has the stakes are higher than just killing Ronnie. But I don't know. Ronnie's death would have been great to add, because he's a likable character. So him dying is a good thing in terms of it does affect the audience.
Right.
But he didn't love enough that like coming back is like, oh yay, LL Cool J lived. It's like, oh, it's more puzzling than anything.
Well, because it doesn't also go anywhere. Like, there's no reason for it.
Exactly.
Like,
that's the thing. At the end of the day, you're not going to see LL Cool J again.
Yeah.
Somehow morphs into Busta Rhymes.
I love these sequences with Michael and Laurie, though, throughout the school. You know, I've told you before, the one shot that they love to use in the trailers was the shot of him where he's hanging down and he's like slowly brings himself down behind Laurie. Like, that was one of the trailer shots. That was a huge thing, and I've always remembered that, and I always love that sequence. I love him going through where he's flipping the tables.
Right.
If you guys get the Shout disc for H2O, there, or I think the doc is also on YouTube, so you could always look it up. But they show the scene with Ottman's score put back in, and it's so much better.
Yeah, I don't know why they screwed the music as much as they did. Although that being said, there is one part of the music of the Halloween theme when it's used, it works so fucking well. And of course, I'm talking about my favorite sequence. One of my favorite sequences in any Halloween movie, but specifically this one. She gets the kids out. She gets Josh and Michelle out of the gate, tells them to go. And she has a moment where instead of leaving, she's going to leave. She has that moment of, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to end this on my terms. It's just a very empowering moment for her. She's no longer a victim.
Yeah.
This is where she becomes a Loomis. She's like, this is down. Either way, I might die, but I'm taking him with me, or I'm going to finish this saga once and for all. Yeah. And she gets him going. She turns around, grabs the ass, and just with the theme starts playing behind her. And she's just, Michael!
Yeah. No, dude,
like, fucking badass.
It's so good. That's my favorite moment in the movie.
Yeah, by far.
That shot of her walking out with the axe and she screams, "Michael!"
From far, and the music is playing in the back of the theme. It's like, this is what it felt so epic. It's like, this is what this whole thing has been building towards. From Halloween 78, it felt connected. 78 to HCO, this is where the ending is supposed to be. It's supposed to be this final big moment. And it's like, oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's so good, man. And that's why I love the whole cat and mouse game in the school with them. Like, as she's hunting him down. And that leads to, the moment. And that moment is, she defeats Michael, quote unquote, and they're all outside and everyone's survived. And there's LL Cool J saying he's going to make a horror thriller novel or a romance thriller novel or something. Somehow he survived.
Can I interject this too? Ronnie comes back and tell her to stop. It's over. Yada, yada. This is, again, it pissed me both times. It feels like I'm like bashing LL Cool J. I'm not. How much stronger would the movie have been? Just how much better would it have been if not Brent, even if it wasn't Brennan, if it was Josh Hartnett who had come back to grab her. Like a familial moment where like she's like killing Michael and he's there to go, "It's done, Mom. It's done. Come with me."
Yeah.
That would have been awesome. But I digress.
No, it's fair. But Lori decides that it's not over until she decapitates dude. She's going to end this on her terms.
Right.
So she totally snaps and she kidnaps Michael and steals an ambulance. And this is where things get a little crazy because they kept reworking the ending. Yeah. There was originally a version that was set on a school bus. There was originally a version that there's a couple versions of this, but the one we get is that they're in the van and Lori topples it over the side of the road and Michael gets pinned to a tree.
Yep.
And there's this moment between him where he's reaching out to her and Lori kind of starts to reach her hand out and then fuck you and cuts his head off.
Right. It's interesting given what we know happens in 8. That this is actually set up. It's obviously set up that way, and I can't say. I mean, it was obviously set up to happen. Like he kind of grasped at the mask. So obviously, as you find out, of course, spoiler alert for 8, you do find out that obviously Mike that wasn't ended up not being Michael. Michael switched places with a paramedic after crushing his larynx, so he couldn't talk or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I gotta say that the whole ending, even with Jaime Lee deciding to end it on her terms, I gotta be honest, the whole thing just felt tacked on.
It does. It does. And I think that's because they were so bent on trying to make sure that they do the sequel setup ending. But I love her behaving because here's the thing, right? If 8 doesn't happen, it's totally fine and it works.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing is that I don't think it feels tacked on until you remember that 8 exists.
Yeah.
That's the issue. Because you could still make the argument that he still switches places with the paramedic at the end of the movie and it goes the way that it goes.
Right.
But because look, they had no idea ultimately that they'd probably start Resurrection the way they did. Like there's no way. It's just a bummer because ultimately I think it does more damage in the end because Resurrection's existence.
It's a no-win situation because they knew Jaime Lee wanted to have this film be the ending of the saga.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they knew they had to have an 8. So they had to find a way to make both of those work out. The death of Michael Myers and the resurrection of Michael Myers happen, and logistically speaking and everything else. And this is the best I can come up with. It doesn't really work that well, but I must, and definitely in retrospect, and we'll talk about this far more later on tonight when we talk about Halloween 8, or the viewers or listeners' ears will be 2 days from now. I feel like Halloween 8 just should have been its own thing completely because it's its own thing after the first 10 minutes anyway. So like, why even bother?
I completely agree, and I think
you don't even have to, and you don't even have to explain how he lived or whatever. You could just ignore it.
You needed none of the stuff with Lori.
No, not at all. But we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later. But
let's not spoil this moment. This is a good film.
This is a great movie. I legitimately mean that. I really love the final moment between Lori and Michael because I think it feels so earned. Again, like leading from that moment with the axe all the way to bring it back around to where she finally beheads him. Right. And just that feeling of she finally did it.
Yeah.
Like she finally got the moment. She finally gets clarity. She finally gets peace in violence, but she gets it. And I think that's ultimately what I've always wanted, because I really like Laurie as a character, but we've talked about it on here that there's times where she felt more helpless. And I like that in this one, she really takes control of the situation.
Yeah.
Like, this is the final woman.
Yeah.
She's not a final girl. This is the final woman.
Yeah.
And fuck you, am I going out on any note but my own?
Right. And it works too, because it's not like she comes back, and it's not like she becomes Superwoman. Like, he still wrecks her a little bit. Like, he's still like in control as far as physically and talent, but she gets the job done, which is the most important part. I really can only sincerely hope that Halloween ends the saga as well as this ended the saga, so to speak.
I'm with you.
Again, to be reborn. I'm sure 5 to 10 years from now, with a new crop.
Dude, it'll be 3 years at best.
Probably, yeah, that's true. Especially if Halloween ends is successful. But here we are. It's time. It's time to actually rate the film. We're going to rate this franchise and go from there. We are at Halloween H20. We've ranked the first 6 so far. I'll remind everybody, we go from 1 to 11 on PLD projects. So just a reminder to everybody, Halloween, we both ranked at 11 out of 11. Halloween 2, I gave it a 4. You gave it a 5.5. Halloween 3, I gave it an 8. You gave it a 9.5. Halloween 4, I gave it a 10. You gave it an 8. Halloween 5, I gave a 4. You gave a 3. Halloween 6, theatrical cut, I gave a 2. You gave a 5.
I did.
The producer's cut, I gave a 3.5. You gave a 6.5. So for H2O, it is your movie. I'm going to let you tell me what you think.
This is a 9.5 for me. It gets knocked for the mask. It gets knocked for I wish the movie was a little longer. That's always kind of been my thing. For 86 minutes, I said it to you. I think it could be 10 minutes longer, and I think it would feel a little bit better. But it all works for me. This is a good fucking movie, man. It's my favorite sequel in the franchise. I don't know if it'll ever be topped in any real capacity. Everything about it feels like the Halloween movie I'd waited so fucking long to see, and it just felt good to see Jaime Lee Curtis get that chance to do that in that movie. And, not that she hasn't in the other ones either, but there's something specific about this one that just works for me. I love the feel. I love that it loves the franchise. It feels like a love letter to the movies beforehand. I really, really love this movie, man. It just works for me.
I get it. I totally get it, dude. Interesting enough, you say that 86 minutes. I do wish I could see a cut that had the cop stuff put back in to see how much that would have affected. I mean, it would definitely made it a little bit longer, a little bit. I wonder if it would have made it better or not. Who knows? Maybe they made the right call cutting the sequences out, just out of curiosity.
There was an extended version apparently that aired in 2003 on FX, but I've never seen it.
I don't know.
So I don't even think the Shout disc has it as because they have some of the TV cuts on some of them, but that one was not.
Interesting. Well, maybe we'll have to hunt that down if we can.
Yeah.
Beyond that, though, in my terms of rankings, I'm not too far below you. It surprises me that you actually ranked it as the same as Halloween 3. Isn't Halloween 3 the same thing for you?
Because they're different, but they're, you know what I mean? Like,
I get it.
It's up there. They're both up there for me.
It's funny, though. You gave it a 9.5. I gave it an 8 for Halloween 3. You gave this a 9.5. I'm giving it 8.5.
Oh, God damn you.
8.5. I will give it 8.5. The mask really knocks it down that much for me. But still, just so you know, that's still at this point, my third favorite, just underneath Halloween 4, still at a 10.
Mm-hmm.
I could, you know what? Fuck it.
Do it.
I'll give it a 9. I'll give it a 9.
Do it. Yes.
I'll give it a 9. I like
that. Was not peer pressure either. He talked himself into that.
I did, because I started thinking about the Michael moment, the Michael moment, because it's so good that it almost counteracts the mask entirely. So, yeah, I'll go with that. I'm good. I'm solid with that. So there we are, guys. That's the end of the show for this week. Stay tuned again for Friday, a bonus episode, because we got to get all these in before Halloween Ends come out. We're going to look at Halloween Resurrection. That should be an interesting talk tonight. But for now, I'm leaving you out on a great note. Please join us. PLD Products has a Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Products. Want to shout out some people: Danielle, Brandon Buckingham, Brandy Parker, Jeff Alterman, John Latrina, Kelly W. Really love having you guys there. This week on Patreon on Friday night, we're going to be having a Patreon hangout. I don't know exactly what time yet. I haven't quite gotten that in place. I don't even know if I told PJ that. He might not be around.
No, you didn't.
I didn't send it out on the Patreon. I forgot you're actually part of my Patreon that way. So it is what it is. I think we mentioned the chat. It's fine. Because I'm actually going to New York City this weekend to see Ben Bateman play in New York on Saturday. I had taken Friday and Saturday off, but I decided not to go down until Saturday. So I have Friday night off now. So I figured let's get this Patreon hangout in there. It should be fun either way. We have some extra content we got to make still. We're starting to get back into the swing of things with that. You can also find class action on this channel. You can find that's where myself, Richard Eric Jarvie, and Maddie Gunner take on different things where we put up movies, franchises, actors, characters, anything up against each other with custom-made categories to find out what is our winner. We just saw this week. Funny. I always have a fun time promoting this because when I'm promoting this, it's already happened. But when I record it, it's not happened yet. This week's show is Goodfellas versus Snatch. Sorry. It's the U.S. gangster movie versus the U.K. gangster movie. Very different takes. It's an interesting comparison, I'm going to say. I can't wait to see what I come up with and what they come up with. But, of course, Crown Jewels, my Queen podcast is every week as well. The new one came out. Will be coming out tomorrow on Thursday, going to Someday One Day from Queen 2. And I think that should do it at Paul_DeNewsU on Twitter. And, of course, the Schmodown Spectacular coming up. Stay tuned for that. We rate the questions. It was fun. It was a blast.
Be nice to the writers. They're only human.
That's true. PJ, plug yourself.
Twitter, Instagram, PJ_Campbell. You can find me over the PJ Campbell Network. I do all things over there. I'm still slowly getting back into the swing of things because I've been doing things. I've been out. I got a lot going on. I'm actually trying to be a real living human being instead of just sitting in front of my computer, which, yeah, I know it's a weird, but I'm doing it. But you can find me doing stuff over there. You can find me here, apparently doing a Patreon hangout on Friday. We'll talk about it. That's fine.
We'll talk about that right after the Hollywood District. You come on. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Otherwise, yeah, just hanging out with this guys. Like he said, Schmodown Spectacular, October 1st. Pour one out. It's the last episode. I hope you guys enjoy it.
All right, guys. Until next week, of course. Actually, until Friday, and then next week.
Stay mediocre.
Mediocre. Right. Never question mediocrity. It's a powerful thing.